Hi all! This week you should start preparing sources for your final project. Your annotated bibliography will be the next check-in that you have for the final project, and it is due on October 10th. For more information on the specifics of the assignment, see the Final Project Wiki in Learning Block 3 for details. I want to stress a few points about our Taking Sides reading. When posting to the discussion forums on Taking Sides, please do not cut and paste your outline. If you do this, you will lose points. I have students submit an outline of the reading before they post to the forum in order to show me that they have read and understood the reading. After you have processed the reading, you should then post comments that critique or explain the side of the debate that you stand on in the discussion forum. Good job, Randy. You may use some of the comments from your outline in the discussion forum, but not the entire outline. When posting to the Taking Sides discussion forums, your responses should add significantly to the discussion by building on others' comments, suggesting alternative views, pointing out problems, and even at times constructively disagreeing. Saying, "I agree," or repeating what someone else has written is not enough to add to the discussion, except on rare occasions when "I agree" sums it up well. Posts that do not add something else to the conversation will lose points. In our VoiceThread discussions, we are doing great. I want to encourage you this week to start talking to one another. On a Think About It slide, respond to one of your classmates in a respectful way to encourage more conversation. Our online discussions should be conducted in the spirit of collegiality. It is an opportunity to ask questions and share thoughts, ideas, and experiences with one another for the sake of advancing our knowledge and understanding of relevant ideas. But be respectful of others' ideas, but also feel free to share different perspectives or opinions. When disagreeing with another person's position, do so positively and politely. That way you'll stay friends with those of whom you disagree with, and you'll be more likely to get your point across. For help with discussion starters that will allow us to forward the discussion in a polite manner, see some of the prompts that I have provided for you. Go up to the first block. Of course, it's not this one. Sorry, it's this one. These are some questions that you can ask of the sources when you're analyzing a primary source, which will add to your discussion. And these are discussion starters that you can just fill in the blank in order to expand our discussion and politely agree and disagree with someone else. Have a great week.